Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. Today I want to talk to you about the feeling of being overwhelmed. And I know most of us know what that feels like, when we feel like we have so many things on our plate that we don't have enough time in the day to get everything done. And I've had so many people call me over the last couple weeks to tell me about why they feel overwhelmed. A lot of people are having difficulty with their businesses. Their children are home more than they used to be because their school is not open all the time. They have worries about the pandemic. They have worries about the election. So many things are on people's minds. But what's so interesting about this idea of being overwhelmed, most of the time, that feeling of being overwhelmed has a lot to do with the future. It has a lot to do with what will happen next week or next month or next year. It's very future-oriented. And yes, there are times when in the exact moment we're in, we know we don't have the time to get everything done. But most of the time, the feeling does come from a projection. And that's good news for most of us because we might be able to pull back a little bit to really analyze that feeling of being overwhelmed and break it down. And often when we do this, we actually calm down and we're able to be more focused and get done what we need to get done during the day. And this is also a really good idea for our children, especially ones that are feeling like they have so much homework or they have a lot of exams or they're planning for something for the future. Most of the time, they don't get things done because they get so overwhelmed. And it starts to create confusion and it starts to create a feeling of anxiousness, like they can't get everything done and then nothing gets done. So what can we do? The first thing that you can do is write down everything that needs to get done. Whether it's something as simple as getting a new garbage pail or something as big as having to do a presentation for work. Because sometimes you'd be really surprised. There are little tasks that you have to do. And because they're being mixed in with big tasks, that's what starts the overwhelm feeling. So it's really important to write it down, even if you're not a list person. And then also write down on the list emotions that are overwhelming you. Because sometimes it's not a task, but it's a feeling that you have about something. So it's good to just put everything on a list. And just by doing that, it helps ground you a little bit. Now, some people might argue, well, when I see everything I need to do, I get even more overwhelmed. But you just have to stay with it. Because most of the time, that feeling of being overwhelmed is that there's so much to do. And there's no order to it, and it's very chaotic. And just the act of writing it down sometimes makes us feel better. Because we see, oh, it's just a list of things I need to get done. In the next column is write down hours and minutes on top. And then go one by one. And write down how long each thing is going to take you. And why that's such a good thing to do is because it's so easy to get the little things off our list. I know sometimes if I just need to call the plumber or the electrician, or I just have to get a light bulb or something, it just all feels like there's too much happening. But then when I realize that will take 5 minutes and that'll take 15 minutes, and I could just designate 1 hour and get so many things off the list. And yes, there are things that are going to take a really long time, but that even helps when I recognize, oh, I need 5 hours for this presentation, and I need 2 hours to edit this blog, whatever I'm doing. It helps to put a time frame on it because then I can make a plan. And then you make another column that's called, how is this making me feel? Because again, sometimes what you need to get done is not what's causing your problem. It's just everything together is causing you issues. So again, when you break it down, you realize the little things aren't really bothering you. And when you realize it's not going to take a lot of time and it's so doable, you become very neutral towards that. And then if you have something that is causing you anxiety and worry, you have to then ask yourself, is this a present worry or a future worry? For instance, if you had a presentation to do and there's time in the day for you to do it, you ask yourself, what am I worried about? You could be worried that it's not going to work out. You don't have the information. Your boss won't like it. But the truth is, you don't know that. So it's really a projection into the future that's causing you this feeling of being overwhelmed and anxious and worried. And that's that moment where you could bring it back to the moment. And you could ask yourself, what can I control? I can only control what I do in this moment. So in this moment, I can make a plan to get it done. And then use that maybe practice for all the future projections. What's my biggest fear? My biggest fear is I'm not going to do a good job. My biggest fear, I'm not going to get it done on time. My biggest fear is my boss is going to not like it. But then you ask yourself, are any of these fears absolutely true? And you can't know what the future will bring. So you can't know these fears are real or true or will happen. So then what else is there? And then you go through the maybe statements. Maybe everything is okay. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe I'll figure it out by the end of the day. And as you incorporate more maybe, you're going to realize that a lot of feeling overwhelmed is about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week. And because you don't know, there's hope. And the best thing you could do in the moment is go back to your list and step by step, get each thing done. And it might not get done in the day and it might not get done in a week, but that's okay. Just keep to your plan and then use maybe to help wipe away those future projections. And then when it comes to ideas or thoughts that are overwhelming you that don't have to do with things you need to get done. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed about the pandemic, or you're feeling overwhelmed that your children are suffering or they feel isolated, or even about the election. Try to bring yourself back to the present. Because again, a lot of these emotions and feelings are projections into the future. And we can't know what's going to happen. And thank goodness we don't know. Because uncertainty is our best friend. If you want your life to change, it has to happen in the unknown. And even if you're going through a hard time today, or you're so sure that things can't get better, you really can never be 100% certain. And that's what's so beautiful. So let hope into your heart. And at the same time, ask yourself, in this moment, is there something I can do? If you're worried about the election, you can vote. If you're worried about the pandemic, maybe you could think about how you can give to somebody who's isolated or suffering, or maybe feed someone or donate money. Maybe you could at least alleviate someone's suffering or your own suffering in that moment. And I know it's a very challenging time to watch our children feel isolated or have all these missed opportunities. So it's really important to remember that the pandemic will one day be over and our children will be out in the world once again. And when we remember that, we come back to the moment. And so then in the moment, we can ask ourselves, what can I do with my child right now? How can I help them? How can I support them in this moment? So a lot of this feeling of overwhelmed is just taking on our entire life in one moment. That's really what we do. We think we need to solve every problem and solve every question and complete every task. And life is not asking that of us. We are asking that of ourselves. And we really can slow down and take life day by day and take each thing on our list one by one, step by step. And yes, we still might run out of time and we might have too many things to do. But if that's the case, then we also have choices to rearrange things and change things and do things differently. Sometimes the chaos we're feeling is coming from within us, and it's coming from our inability to be patient, our inability to deal with uncertainty. And so if we can calm that feeling of being overwhelmed down, we will show up in the world with more presence and more grace and more groundedness and more of an ability to get things done. And what I often find is when we're overwhelmed, we also miss out on the moment we're in. So I hope you try some of these ideas to help you feel more calm and grounded and less overwhelmed. So you could show up every day for your job and your children and your life and yourself and get more done and feel better, feel more joy, feel more productive, and also more expansive. Even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, there are so many things that we can still do for ourselves and our family and our friends, and new ideas and new businesses. We just have to create enough space within ourselves to see all these possibilities and all these opportunities and give ourselves some peace back so we can clear our mind, enjoy the moment, and always remember, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my book, The Gift of Maybe, it's available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you like this podcast, you could subscribe and leave a comment.